Congressman Adam Kinzinger, Republican from Illinois, is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Good evening, sir, and I do not pretend to have the answers to this, but can you tell me what we can do towards North Korea that we have not yet tried to do that may have some impact on them getting rid of their nuclear tests, nuclear weapons?
Well, I think it's a couple things. Number one, we do have to pressure China, and I think this will go to secondary sanctions against Chinese banks that do business with North Korea but also have interest in the United States. That can be compelling. Intercepting cargo ships, sanctioning the airline. So putting the economic pressure on North Korea. I think having a credible military option, not saying that we're going to default to using military option because obviously it would be very bad if that happened, but having that option actually can empower the diplomatic end of a negotiation. And I also think we have to be investing. So when people talk about missile defense, when folks talk about technology and plussing up the military, which we're going to talk about in Congress pretty soon, this is investing in the ability to intercept missiles once they're off the launch phase. And that's going to be extremely important to defending our country from whether North Korea, Iran, or any other country that gets these kind of weapons.
All right, a couple of things. One is the missile defense. We're setting up a missile defense, the THAAD system in South Korea. China's very unhappy about that, so that's not going to go big with China. In terms of sanctions, if we ramp up the sanctions on North Korea, the banking, we need the cooperation of China to do that, and that, of course, would have China's not going to be happy about, and in fact, that would have an impact on China. And we do so much business with China that to be able to do some sort of increased banking sanctions would be, in many ways, sort of catastrophic on issues of trade. And then finally, the issue of China's degree of cooperation is that last week a UN Security Council resolution to condemn the most recent missile test by North Korea. While China didn't veto it, it abstained from voting, which I guess is a tick up in terms of conduct. So I don't know why we're putting all our eggs in the basket on China. I just don't see China stepping up until something else happens.
Well, I think you're right, and I think what you have right now is China's looking at North Korea, and they've always kind of historically seen it as a buffer because of the Korean War against American aggression or against anything like that. They're worried about the humanitarian crisis if the government collapsed, and so they look at this right now and say it is in our interest to not necessarily engage against North Korea, and that's where you have to begin to change that. And I think, frankly, President Trump did a good thing by saying, hey, look, from the economic side, you talk about currency manipulation. I believe you manipulate currency, but at the same time, we're willing to put different things on the table if you can help us with this very important issue of North Korea. But in the long run, again, I think we have to have a credible military option. By the way, that is a credible military option to destroy their nuclear weapons, but a war on the peninsula will be extremely violent, extremely bloody, and that can't be stopped.
And, of course, even if we have a good THAAD missile defense set up, the fact remains is they have between 50 and 30,000 artillery weapons on the southern border at the DMZ of North Korea that they can unload on South Korea, which would be catastrophic. And engaging in a battle like that would be horrible for that peninsula.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, again, we would have the ability to take out their nuclear infrastructure if we saw a point at which we were under nuclear threat. And that is obviously an extremely harmful situation. But you'd have to take into account the fact that that would commence more than likely a war on the Korean Peninsula. And as you mentioned, tens of thousands of artillery pieces, some that literally pop out of mountains and fire. You cannot destroy all that in one fell swoop. So there would be massive casualties. So military option is the absolutely next to worst case scenario. The worst case scenario would be North Korea marrying nuclear warheads to an ICBM.
And as I started this, I don't have all the answers. I have no answers. I've thought about this one, but I don't know what we're going to do about this one. Anyway, Congressman, thank you, sir.